I have an idea.
Yes.
First, actually, is it dumb that we always say that we have an idea, but it's just a question? Just thematically, we're trying to make it fit the idea that ideas are born in the breeding pod, but it's all questions.
Maybe we could say, I'm forming an idea.
I'm forming an idea.
I'm birthing an idea right now.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Hey, Devin, I'm about to pop out a big one, but I might need your help to get her all the way out.
In counseling, we like to refer to ourselves as the midwife of ideas.
Do you?
It is a philosophical stance that some therapists take. Yes.
What ideas?
I don't know, like just things, feelings. We're just like a midwife of human experience. We're not creating anything. We're just helping to move it along in a way that's healthy and conducive to, just overall positive experience. We're like happiness doulas.
I don't like that.
That's just what they say.
So
I didn't say I am one.
Here's my idea, midwife. I think... Well, maybe that is more of a statement. I'll make it a question. Basically, I think...
I had an idea. I'm going to force it into a question so it fits the format. The format that didn't make
doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Basically, I think that most of my life / career is built from the ability to recognize lucky breaks and to capitalize on lucky breaks when they arise, to identify and capitalize. And I would argue that even you, to some extent, are that. I can think of one big one. And I want to sort of parse out and think through a little bit of like, how do you stay cognizant, or like just basically, how do you look for those? And then how do you prepare yourself to be ready for when they arrive? It's sort of an extension of the thing that we talked about last week that no one will ever hear because we had so many technical problems.
Mm-hmm. And it was mean.
I said
so many mean things.
Yeah. But more of the technical problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything jump to mind for you? If not, I can just launch into my own.
Honestly, I actually do think it kind of ties into what we talked about last week that one will ever know because we were so mean to Dave.
Right.
But I often think that part of how I am able to capitalize on a lucky break, as you put it,
or we can redefine it if you want.
Well, no, I actually will put it that way because I think that it's rooted in the fact that I don't think I'm like better than anyone else. Like there's like, I do think that I work hard for things and sometimes things work out, but also like when really cool things happen, like it's not always just because I worked harder than someone else. Like sometimes I did just get lucky. And I think that if I'm able to balance out, like I'm a hardworking person who does try to make things happen for myself while also I'm not God's gift to anything. Like sometimes I just got really lucky and I need to be able to capitalize on the fact that I just got a break that someone else might not get. I feel like that's like the sweet spot for being successful. It's like high self-efficacy. Like I can do things.
Yeah.
And I'm also pretty lucky sometimes, or sometimes I'm not lucky and I just need to ride out a string of bad luck. That doesn't mean I'm terrible at what I'm doing. It just means things aren't breaking my way right now and I just need to wait for the next break.
So how do you identify, well, like, do you have like a lucky break that's in mind? I got a big one.
Yeah, hit me with your big one, dude.
You got into college.
Yeah.
Because you got lucky.
Yeah.
And you knew me.
Yeah.
Who could write.
No, I agree. I mean, but I think
well,
that's
I mean, you might have gotten off anyway, but the basic gist is you were on the waiting list.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't doing
me,
myself any favors to get
well,
pulled off.
all I mean is that with or without me, it would have or would not have had. Like, basically, whether it went was a matter of somebody deciding to give you a shot or not.
Yeah.
Or somebody dropping out. I mean, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't exactly know how they make the waitlist decisions, but...
Yeah. No, I mean, and that kind of stuff happens all the time. Like, you hear about how people were the second choice for something, and then they ended up crushing it. Like,
yeah.
You know,
Your Tom Brady's of the world, your 6th round draft picks.
Yeah, like and that's the thing is that I don't think anyone ever would accuse Tom Brady's career of just being luck, right? He worked hard and he put himself in a position, but also things had to fall a certain way, right? Like, you know, and I think that's the sweet spot. Once again, it's the combination of luck and being able to capitalize on it while also preparing yourself for when you do get a break, that you're ready to like jump on that opportunity. Because like going back to me getting into college, I got into Longwood, which, you know, it's a school and people go there, and there are lots of successful people who have graduated from Longwood. It's a really great teacher school, nursing school. Like, they have programs that will make successful people. If I had gone to Longwood, I don't think it would have ruined my life.
Right. Do you think going from Longwood to William and Mary would have been as feasible?
Probably not. But that's the thing is, because
it looks like you went to William and Mary, which you did.
I did, and I get to tell people that I did, and everybody goes, "Wow, that's really impressive."
Nobody asks where you were before that, which is helpful.
Yeah. So,
I see.
You know, but yeah, I think that it's kind of that also that piece of it. Like, there's this long view of
Longwood, even
Longwood. Yeah.
I like to take the Longwood.
I do too. I do too.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean it's kind of this like combination of having this long view of, if I had gone to Longwood, it wouldn't have ruined my life. Going to JMU, I think, was a really cool, lucky break. Mm-hmm. When I got to JMU, I did work hard to be successful there.
Sure.
And you know, it's just that kind of combination of things work out, things don't work out, just keep working hard, and things, you know, eventually break. And in a good way. And so, yeah, or like even with grad school, like I think about this all the time, where I was trying to find my internship, and the internship part of like grad school for counseling is like really intense, because it's like if you don't get a spot, you're just effed. Like, they're like, sorry dude, like I guess you can't be here anymore. And they, in the program,
the school part,
yeah, they're just like, we'll see you next year. Like, when this internship class happens again, you can try again.
I see. Yeah.
And they do nothing. Like, they do nothing to help. They're like, here's a list of some people that you can call. Good luck. And so I found this place in Virginia Beach, which was like an hour and some change from where William and Mary is. I had gone to the trainings. It was like up until like 3 days before the cutoff for like having your place. And then they just like ghosted me. Like, didn't say a word to me. Like, the school called because they're like, hey, we didn't get any of the paperwork you're supposed to do. What's going on? Nothing. And I was like, well, this is just terrible luck. Like, this is why me? My whole life is going to fall apart. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm just going to keep calling and finding things. And then it just happened that people were like, okay, fine. Like, we don't have anything for you to do, but we feel bad for you, so come on.
The same place?
Different place.
Oh, okay.
Where they had already had, like, an intern. They had 2 interns from William and Mary already, and they're like, we literally have nothing for you to do, but we'll figure it out. Ended up being, like, the greatest opportunity I could have had for an internship, as far as I'm concerned. Like,
yeah,
gave me lots of cool opportunities, and I worked hard to make things happen there, but, like, I found out later that the place that I would have worked at sucks. Like, not like them, you know, ghosting me, I think was part of them sucking, but they sucked for a whole litany of other reasons. And so I just felt very, like, it was fortunate that happened. And then when it happened, I saw it as a lucky opportunity and not as like a, well, shucks, like, I guess I have to settle for this crappy thing.
So how do you... And maybe it doesn't matter, but how do you determine, like, for example, as somebody who has worked now for a ton of different outlets over the media outlets, whatever, comedy outlets over the past, it kind of started in 2016. How do you kind of decide which are the lucky good breaks worth pursuing and which are the ones where you actually need to cut tie, or like basically not pursue? Like, how do you make those kinds of decisions if you're faced with a lot of things? For example, it's actually kind of similar to what you're talking about, but it's like I got accepted to write for Screen Rant, but the process was so convoluted, and they kind of shafted me on on an article or whatever. And even though at the time I thought they were big and worth writing for, I pretty quickly was like, it's just not worth my time. And it felt like a lucky break because it's hard to get into publications, but I just gave up immediately on it. And by contrast, obviously, like Cracked, I just plugged away at for freaking 4 years before I got an opportunity to go full time. Obviously, that's the big lucky break, is me at the right time showing up with the right thing that they wanted, so that they were willing to let me do it. But even in that, I was like pretty hesitant to go for it. And anyway, just curious if you've had instances where it's like you have a lot of opportunities, some feel lucky, some feel not, but you have to make those decisions of which to pursue. Or, and I guess another way to think about it too is just, do you kind of treat every opportunity equally and just sort of wait to see what was worth it?
Yeah.
You just assume they're all worth it, and then you wait and see.
I think that they're goodness gracious. I think that this kind of circles back to something that I think about a lot, which is like value-based decision making. Because like every opportunity is an opportunity, right? Like, I mean, you can look at it like, okay, each one of these is a door that leads somewhere, right? Yeah. Which is true. And then there's also the part of it though, which is like knowing who you are and what you actually want, right? Like seeing, like going back to like the Screen Rant Cracked thing, right? Knowing that you wanted to be Cracked, right? Like you cared about Cracked for a long time. It was funny. It was really great. Like it was something that I think that if Cracked was a little more convoluted, I think you would have kept plugging away at it differently because you cared about Cracked, like what it meant to you, what it meant to other people, like that meant something to you uniquely versus what Screen Rant meant.
Right.
Right. They're both opportunities. You could have pursued them both equally. Yeah. Right. And so there's kind of this piece of it where I think that part of what helps in being able to jump on opportunities is also just knowing who you are and what you want. Because like when COVID hit, right, I had the opportunity to stay on, and I probably could have worked my way up a nonprofit that had this like kind of basically this crisis of like they had to let go of all of their unlicensed people, and I had just gotten licensed. And so like a lot of people would have been like, that's such a great break. Like everybody else de facto kind of gets furloughed, laid off, but like you get to stay. And by staying, I probably could have very easily leveraged that into being able to run my own like service area. And I probably, nonprofits not making bank anyway, but it would have been a really good upward mobility opportunity for that organization.
Right.
And then I had the opportunity to go work out of a closet, starting my own practice, and maybe it would work, maybe it didn't. I didn't know what I was doing. But the closet felt lucky to me, right? Like it was like the opportunity to do this, that felt way more lucky to me than, oh, well, I'm licensed and I can work up this ladder at this organization.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people, if it was switched, they would have been like, no, working out of the closet doesn't feel lucky. Like that just feels like the second choice to being able to stay here and work upwards.
Yeah.
But I think it's just entirely rooted in what you want. And what I wanted was to build my own thing. Like I just wanted to do it my way and to do it differently and to see if that's sustainable. And so COVID created an opportunity where someone was like, well, I can't fill my offices. So yeah, come in here and work for free. And if it works out, great, you can start paying me rent. If it doesn't, whatever.
Lease for free.
Yeah.
It just made Correct. It sound like...
Yes. Yeah. I paid no money to start my business.
Yeah.
And they were like, if it ever becomes successful, great. And that felt like way more of a lucky break to me, even though there was no certainty in whether or not my business would do well, than somebody saying like, we'll give you a $30,000 raise and you can work your buns off. Like, that doesn't sound exciting to
Yeah,
me.
and to be clear, the global pandemic that killed millions
is
really just a lucky break for you.
Is really, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, but like, even in that, right? It's
you're
like
watching the Italians stack bodies, and you're like,
this
I think
is
I could
looking
leverage
good for
this.
me. I mean, but that's the thing, right? Is that like there are things that are objectively like sad, terrible things can create opportunities, and it's like that's kind of a hard thing that people, I do think, have to be able to square. Like, you know, for every person who's getting their dream job, like, somebody else might have lost that job, or like, you know, like we see all the time where it's like people get forced out of things, or, you know, businesses collapse so other businesses can come in and figure out how to do it better. Like, there is kind of this part of it where the fortune and misfortune of other people are like tied very closely together most of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that piece of it where, once again, it's that self-efficacy and that belief that it's like, okay, well, this is my opportunity. It might be tied to someone else's missed opportunity or some misfortune or a global pandemic, but like, being able to say like, okay, well, this could be 98% crappy, but there's something here for me that I can take advantage of and, you know, turn into an opportunity, I think, is what sets a lot of successful people from unsuccessful people apart.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so I'll say one of the mean things that I was saying last week. I don't think this meanly, but I think a lot about. I am in this middle ground now, or even 6 months ago, this was more true. Of like, I was the guy in charge of a big thing, where people would love, in theory, to work and contribute, and now, becoming more and more just my own big thing where I'm running out of time. I had to say no sort of to somebody doing a podcast recently. Not because I didn't want to do it, not because I couldn't do it, but I was just like, we're getting to the point where like I sort of have to decide whether I have to think a lot more clearly about like what I'm doing for every hour of the day value wise, because it's like I need to either be focusing on building this thing or hanging out with the kids, or like resting so I can do it more, hanging out with my wife. And so I was just like, the way this is being presented to me, it's just going to take too long. It's going to take too much mental space. This is why Barack Obama wears the same suit every day. I just need one fewer choice. But anyway, there have been people that, and some do it better or worse or whatever, but there are people that will be like, if I send you something, will you look at it? And there was a window in there where it's like, absolutely, you know, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to do whatever. And then people wouldn't send it. And then 6 months would pass and they show up again and they're like, if I send you something, you're going to look at it? And I'm like, sure. But in a small sense, that could be a lucky opportunity for them where I am available enough and have at least done something that it could be more valuable for me to look at it than your mom. Maybe, hopefully. Maybe your mom's very talented at YouTube.
Maybe.
Algorithmic. I don't know.
It's like, honestly, my mom's too close to this. I need someone who's a little less talented, a little less in it.
And I just think about, you know, or like there are people that have written 4 cracked articles just because they got accepted and then they never did anything with it. As opposed to the people who plugged away forever and then got hired full time and then got fired. So bad luck. Or like me, who, you know, did 4 years of it before I found the right opportunity even in that organization. And it's kind of like, I wish it was easier to explain like, hey, or, you know, again, I had a couple of opportunities for people to do some work for me, and they did not do it in a way that felt very like, hey, this could be an open door into something really cool if I try really hard here. They sort of just did the thing at a minimum. And that's not really I don't tend to do things just to do them. But sometimes I do, I guess. And I suppose it's like, I wish I could convey to them that I'm like, this could be cool, I think. And this is where you went on a tangent last week about nobody trusts bosses or corporations anymore, with good reason. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if people need to start it's like, yeah, you can't trust anything, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try when an opportunity to maybe do something better arises, and just try and figure out ways to maybe safeguard against getting screwed or something. Like if you want to submit something, make sure you're getting paid for it, or make sure you retain the ownership of it. Like if you were just sending me a video that you made, just send it. I don't own it. I'll give you feedback and you can do whatever you want with it. That should be an interesting opportunity, but also don't just like film your butthole on your iPhone and send it. I have enough of those. I don't know. I think it's just...
You do have a lot of those.
I
make sure of it personally.
Yeah. I just think, it's like, so I work for Paste magazine. I got a kind of a lucky break in the sense that they were like, you're kind of old. Most of our interns are like 20. You're like 27. But you seem relatively qualified, and it only costs us $500 for the whole month anyway, or for the whole summer anyway. So why don't you move down to Atlanta for 3 months and we'll see. And when I was there, I wrote 420 articles in 3 months. And I did everything I could. I tried to kick as much ass as I could. They got to a point where they would tell me to go home early because they were like, we just can't edit your articles fast enough, basically. Or like can't get them up. We're like drowning the website in your stuff, which was good. And they were like, you're doing great, all this stuff, it's going to be awesome. And then of course everybody got fired because that's just what happened in this like 2016 to now, I guess.
Yes.
It's ongoing. It's a problem. But I still feel like because of that, I had this body of work. I used the opportunity to have 420, smoke 'em up bylines at Paste, which is a relatively well-known magazine, and also weirdly is surviving. Like they just bought the AV Club and they bought Jezebel, and they're like sort of acquiring
Paste
other cool things that
I see you Paste
that are being killed by whatever. And it's like, if I looked at that opportunity, I made $500 to create so much content that performed really well for them. And then I went back home, and in September of that year, I was pretty depressed because I was like, what was the point of that? That was such a waste of my time. But, the dividends didn't pay off until later. But I also think there are just sort of intrinsic dividends, or like intrinsic value of working hard and learning how to write over and over and over iteratively in this particular way in somebody else's style and all this stuff. And that'll be just one small thing is, I think, if you get an opportunity, what I do all the time, anytime I've written for a new outlet or made a video on spec for somebody, what I do is I take their article, an article they published recently, copy and paste it, and then write over top of it, and then just try and be like, they tend to do an intro like this, they tend to do the meat like this, they tend to end like this. And then when you give it back to them, and if they have a style guide, I ask for that so that I can nail it. And it's like, just try a little bit, and I think you'll get a lot further, even if you don't literally get in the door at that place. I think this sort of treating every opportunity like it could be an opportunity, it's probably valuable. But the reason that it's hard to know is because, again, like with Screen Rant, they were such dicks to me. Basically, I got the opportunity to write about plot holes in Avengers Endgame. So I went and I watched the movie.
This.
Yeah, and I wrote all this stuff, and they were like, actually, this convoluted ass Trello process is that you have to talk to us first before you write it, and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm just trying to get it out because it just released. I assume every minute that this article is not live is lost SEO potential or whatever. I'm trying to do you a favor, and like, we're just going to give it to another writer. And I was like, so I just went, paid money of my own to go see this movie, stayed up all night writing all this crap, and you won't even like edit it. You're just burning it down because you think I didn't do the process right. So then I sold it to Ranker, and it was fine, and I did more stuff with Ranker. But it's just kind of like, that was a bad opportunity, and I did not continue to push it.
Yeah. But I think there's also this other piece of it, though, where bad opportunities are still opportunities because it's an opportunity to fail well, right? Like going back to Paste, I do think that like beyond just the sheer volume of work that you did and the benefit of being able to like have that much opportunity to work, but also like you said, being able to come back and actually make meaning out of like, that was a waste of my time. Like this didn't go anywhere. I think that that arguably is just as important as if it had gone somewhere in senses, because it's being able to be like, okay, well, I did really care about something. Like I did try, and it didn't work out. And what am I going to do now? Like I, you know, most successful people have failed at some point. I think about it a lot where, you know, we kind of, I don't remember, this wasn't in the Scrapped episode. Like it's like that, the risk taking, right? Like being able to go out, like some opportunities are inherently more risky. What does it look like to be able to go out, take a risky opportunity, fail, and then learn and pivot and go somewhere else, right? And so, you know, I think that like a big part of a lot of the stuff that I've seen you do that haven't worked out, I think one of the main things that I think is really cool about how you do it is you're just kind of like, okay, well now I know what I like and don't like, or I know what worked and what didn't work, or okay, these are the types of organizations that I want, and these are the things that I don't want when I'm working for people. And sometimes you were just kind of churning out stuff because you were trying to get paid, which is fine, right? But like all through that process, I do think you were actively like learning and refining. It wasn't just wasted time or like opportunity, right? It was, well, you know, I'm not gonna write for people who do things this way. And kind of going back to it is, well, the next time you've got 3 opportunities in front of you, well, you've learned something so that you know, like, okay, well, this isn't the opportunity I think it might be.
Well, I think too, like, you know, it is important to be able to assess risk accurately. So like, I mean, you've mentioned this before, you probably mentioned it in this really spicy, just devastating episode that we're just both lucky that never aired, because we would be so canceled and they'd be burning down our houses. But you have said, and this is exactly what my dad said when he started a business at literally like the same age as me. Basically, if it fails, your own business, worst case scenario, you just go work for somebody else. There's plenty of opportunity in that field, in this field. And, you know, as long as you're not pouring $50,000 you don't have into it, that all of a sudden now you're on the hook for, you'll bounce back. It'll be fine. It'll just be wasted time, maybe, but it's not devastating in any meaningful way. And to your point, the value from it could be, oh, maybe I don't like working for myself, or maybe I hate people on Medicaid. I don't know. I don't want to work with this population, which. You know, to be clear, I'm on Medicaid,
and I hate you,
and you hate me. And so it's kind of like, I don't know. When Paste didn't pan out, well, this is the thing that we've always thought is like, if things don't work out with any of these crazy swings I take, the thing that we can always fall back on is that Anna, my wife, is an occupational therapist, and she could go back to work full time and probably make plenty of money, and then we'd have health insurance, and it would, honestly, that's probably always been the better play. But you know, we keep having these kids. She likes being home with the kids. I like her being home with the kids. The kids like her being home with the kids. And so, you know, we just don't have a very expensive lifestyle either, and so we have an ability to kind of take these risks. But it's even worth thinking through, like, okay, so for somebody that has potentially taken their shot, DM'd me, I'm going to send you a video. Or, you know, let's just take it back to me. It's kind of like when I sent Crack the video, the pilot video, the night before we sent it, or maybe it was a week before, a bunch of you guys came over and we watched it. You remember that? And I had said, I don't know to who, maybe everyone, maybe just you, maybe myself. I was like, I am just as worried that they'll accept it as they'll reject it. partially because I think this is the thing I guess I'm trying to get at a little bit with lucky breaks or opportunities or whatever. It's like you have to understand that if it works, you're going to have to keep doing it or whatever. Like when they reached out to me, he was like, we want you to make a weekly video. And I was like, oh, I spent like 3 months making the pilot, my guy. Every week? And he's like, I mean, that's the only thing that seems to make sense. I was like, what if we did one a month if I'm feeling like it? You know? But eventually I was like, okay, fine, freaking whatever. I'll do one a month. I'll try and one a week. I'll try and figure out how the hell to make that work. And then in that process, even if they had not bought, so they bought 10 episodes out the gate, even if they had not bought the next 10 and or they had never hired me full time, there would be a piece of me that now would go, hey, here's what it would take for me to make a weekly video for the internet. That would just be a good learning process in general. Do I like pumping things out weekly? And now 4 years later, the answer is mostly no. I would rather make bigger, crazier things once a month or once every 6 weeks or whatever. But I needed it was valuable for me to just do it the way I was asked to do it for a while, to learn that. Because I think, prevailing wisdom on YouTube is you got to do something every week. And that's why they said that. They didn't know. And I think that can be true. It can be valuable, but I think there are a lot of other factors at play. But I wouldn't know that unless I did it. And so I guess the thing is, like, if you're even going to take a swing at a thing, you need to recognize that if you hit it, they're going to throw it to you. You're going to have to do it again. So if you aren't going to put in the effort, then just like keep doing something else. I mean, it's fine. You don't have to try for things. Anyway, I gave somebody an opportunity to do something and it was like, just try. But also, maybe they were like, well, what if they like it and then they want more? I don't want to do that. In which case, I wish you had just never shown up in the first place, which is fine. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's something that I think this is the thing I'd said before. It's like, if you think you want to look like The Rock, if you want to look like The Rock, you have to want to work out all the time.
If you want to look like The Rock, you got to work out like The Rock. You got to be The Rock.
That's what they say. But it's like, everybody's like, yeah, I want to look like The Rock because wouldn't it be rad if I was huge? But it's like, you actually have to want every piece of that.
Which includes eating like 20 pancakes for breakfast.
That's true.
My tummy would hurt. I think that's where I draw the line.
Yeah. I'm like, I can work out that much, but that many pancakes? No, thank you. Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like, a lot of these like cool opportunities, starting your own business, making YouTube videos or whatever, there's so many parts of it that go into it that are not the one sexy cool thing that looks fun. And so it's like helpful to sort of try and assess what do you like at all about any process or any job or any opportunity, and then see if that lines up with what you think you want. I don't know why we keep coming back to this kind of thing, but
I mean, I think it's the thing. I think it's just the thing. Unless we want to just talk about who our favorite comic book characters are.
Dude, but I really like Batman.
You know what? Batman sees his opportunities. He takes his parents die. He gets a lot of money from that. And then he gets to wear spandex.
He doesn't
cool.
just like flying around with a Viagra enhanced stiffening cape. He does the work of punching the bad guys, pretending to be the playboy billionaire. He does all of it. He doesn't sleep very well.
Well, honestly, the last Batman movie, I think, does such a good job of making Batman's life look so unsexy. Because like every Batman movie from like the 80s up until Robert Pattinson got a hold of it, I was like, yeah, Batman's life, like, I mean, it's kind of scary, like in like a, oh, I'm a superhero kind of way, but also it's pretty rad most of the time. And then he's just like, just giant bags under his eyes constantly, like just staring at pictures for 24 hours at a time, like, I gotta solve this riddle. And I'm like, your life sounds really hard.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the cost of being Batman, you know? Like, that's, if you want to live like Batman, you got to live like Batman. And part of that is sitting in a dark cave with a butler who's like, hey, you should run your company. And you're like, go away.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would argue that even in the Christopher Nolan ones, to some extent, you know, it takes him like 30 years to get over his angst, sort of his parents and do something about it.
It does.
That's why he's like wandering around in Tibet or wherever the hell the League of Shadows is. And then, you know, the love of his life catches on fire. You know, there's a lot of sad elements.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Batman's... I think specifically the Batman arc, most people would argue is pretty lame just throughout. Like, Batman doesn't have a lot of wins. Beyond... I think that's the draw of Batman for a lot of people, is that his life just generally sucks.
Yeah, well, it's like do you keep going with like no reward?
Yeah.
Even to just the extent that, like, I guess Gotham will never be a nice place to live. It doesn't matter how hard he fights it. And I know that people always make the thing of, well, yeah, if he just like invested in public programs. I'm like, what public program defeats radioactive crocodile men? You know?
The one that stops nuclear proliferation.
No, he's already here. Okay. You know, like the guy that's crazy and does everything according to, he kills people on holidays. It's not like a public. He's not like if he had more soup, he wouldn't do that anymore.
Maybe. I mean, maybe not. But like his parents might not have had a crazy person on their hands.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
we get into some deep water there.
Yeah.
The crocodile infested waters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, I think that the topic though of like, why do we keep circling back to the same places, is I just think that the same places are thematically very important for being alive, right? It's just like this constant process of what do you care about? Are you willing to actually do that work? Are you like, you know, can you fail well and then get back up and then go do the next thing? Like,
can you Chubbawamba?
Can you Chubbawamba? I just think that those things are going to come up all the time, because it's the same if we're talking about starting a business. Like, even like I think about it like with playing video games, right? I want to be good at Rainbow Six Siege,
but you're not.
And that's the thing, is I'm not. All of the little teeny boppers still playing. They make it very clear that there's no space for a 30-something-year-old trying to get good at Rainbow Six Siege. But the thing is,
I hang pretty well.
That's fine.
I make new friends on there all the time.
You used to hang. You don't play anymore.
I haven't played in a while. I played like 2 years ago, and I'll just say I made a bunch of new friends, and we were having a lot of fun. But then they all started fighting about politics one day, and I just never came back. And every once in a while, Roll Tide will show up in my DMs and be like, "You coming back? Where are you, buddy?"
You're like, "No."
I'm like, "It just got too spicy." But also the teammate element is the only thing that I like. Like, I only want to play with people who communicate. But if they're also yelling about Trump while I'm trying to snipe somebody in the head, not fun.
Not for you. But that's the thing, is that's the cost of being good at Siege. Somebody's going to talk about Trump. Somebody's going to want to have sex with your child. It's just not what you want. And that's the thing, is there's some people who want that, and they can go. But it's that being able to assess, like, for me, it used to be that I just had a lot of time. So I played a lot of video games. My baseline ability to be good at them was just generally higher. And I see now that as a 30-year-old, if I want to not just be like playing Siege, but I actually want to be good at Siege, I have to commit a level of time and effort and attention. Like, I have to actually learn how the game works. And I just don't want to do that. And that's okay. I'm just not going to be good at Siege. I can still play it, but I probably, you know, it reminds me of the people who were like, in college, there were always the people, you know, we have our LAN parties, we're playing online, we're doing our thing, and there's always the dude who's like actually convinced they're going to be like MLG, right? Major League Gamer. They're going for it. And it's just kind of like...
I feel like you're yelling at me now.
I am.
I didn't think I was going pro, but I know you do love...
I didn't. But there are people who are that way.
To shoot people and then physically go punch them in the arm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, but there's like this piece of it. It's like, well, to be a major league gamer, right, you probably need to be doing this hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day, right? Like I had a client once. They were one of my favorite clients ever because we did telehealth, and they did like mouse pointing, clicking training during our sessions because they were like obsessed with the idea of like they were going to be a major league gamer. But I was like, but you actually, I do have some faith that you could do it. Because they literally spent 8 hours a day. It would be like 30 points would pop up, and they would go through, and they had to click them all on tiny little reticles. And I was like, honestly, you're doing the work to do it. Like, I have way more faith that you will do it.
Yeah.
And then I would go to my next client, and they're like, well, I play, Fortnite, so I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be big. It's like, you actually kind of suck. Like, you don't actually do any of the work to get good at it. You just like thinking you're good at something, or you just like the idea of being a famous, Fortnite player. And it's just like
a ninja, if you will.
I will. He's a fan of the Detroit Lions, by the way.
Ninja?
Yeah, Ninja is. Fun fact.
Friend of the pod.
Maybe.
He might be a
I don't know if he
patron,
wants-
just under a pseudonym.
Maybe. We don't know.
He's already got a pseudonym. But
He's so deep in pseudonyms at this point. He doesn't, know who he is
anymore. Yeah.
Come home, Daryl. Yeah.
I'm sure everybody actually knows his name. I just don't know any.
No, 1,000% people know.
I know his hair is different colors usually.
Mm-hmm. And I know he's a Detroit Lions fan. That's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, I just think this stuff kind of comes up a lot, where it's like people do things because most of the time people do things because they want to be good at it, right? They feel good about themselves when they do something successfully, which, even with hobbies, it's like the vast majority of people who pick up a hobby aren't absolute trash at it. And some people who do, like, they do it strictly for the love of the game. That's fine, but they know it's for the love of the game.
Yeah.
But like most people pick up a hobby because they're kind of good at it. They have some natural inclination towards it, and they see that the more they do it, there's parts of it that they get better at.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. But like, there's just this part of it where I think that it's rooted in our biology to like be good at things. Like, I do think that we have a desire for mastery that is part of what we are as a human being.
Whoa.
Yeah. But I think
human
that there
beings,
are
friend of the pod.
all of them. big fan of human beings. But I think that that's where like so many people like really struggle now, is that like I think that the expectation of what it means to be good at something is like totally lost. Like I just remember when I was elementary school, middle school, it was like when the research had come out for like how many hours do you have to do something to like be really good at it.
10,000.
Yeah, right. It's like I think that was like kind of a big thing that people kind of pushed for, was like, you just have to do things a lot. Like, you have to be obsessed with things to be really, really good at them. But now, like, being obsessed with things to get good at them, the things that I think people gravitate towards, don't really, like, I don't want to say they don't matter. I like video games. I like playing video games, but a lot of people immerse themselves and spend a lot of time on things that aren't going to help them get where they want to be. Right. Sure. So it's like I do think like one of the things that I would argue that I'm in mastery territory on is like navigating people. Right.
Ooh.
I do it professionally. I have, I've literally logged like for my residency, and I'm 4 years into my license now. Like, you have to log 2,500 direct hours with people. Been doing that. I did it all through grad school. I'm a human being who's talked to people my whole life, right? So like, I do think that there's a part of it where there's like a level of mastery in it.
Sure.
And I use that every day. I use it with my kids. I use it with my job. I use it when I go to the grocery store to talk myself out of a speeding ticket. That's never happened, but I will do it one day. I'm very excited about
because
it.
of your ample bosoms.
I'm more than a piece of meat, but
Ample Bosoms, friend of the pod.
But there's like this piece of it now where it's like so many of the things that people I think are drawn towards, they're developing mastery on things that don't translate. And I think they do translate in some capacities, right? So like, you know, saying like I'm going to spend a lot of time like on my computer, right? Going back to my client who did the clicking thing. He was like obsessed with this idea of mastery. He was like amazing at Rubik's cubes, you know, aiming reticles, did all of these things. It was really cool to watch. And he got really into, like, he played Roblox. And he was like, I'm going to be a game developer. I was like, okay, like, what does it actually mean to be a game developer? And he's like, I don't know. Like, I got to figure that out.
You got to aim
so,
really
like,
well.
he went, didn't talk about it for almost a month and a half. And then came back and he's like, okay, I got it. And he was like, this is the coding language that they use for Roblox, and this is, I found how to do it. I've been practicing it. I've started developing my own games. Like, these are some of the mechanics I've done. Like, I actually came up with this cool, like, it was like a wall running mechanic. He was like the way that Roblox does their coding is they'll do like open source code.
Yeah.
And so like people can take it and put it on there, like to gain recognition, so that like other people will like come and ask them to work on their projects and stuff. He was like doing all this stuff, and it was like, he was like, I'm gonna be a game developer, and it's really exciting. And then like when you talk to his parents, he's only like 14. When you talk to his parents, they were like, he just plays Roblox. Like, he just plays a lot of Roblox, and he thinks he's gonna be a game developer. And I'm like, I don't think you know what he's doing. Like, you should actually go ask what he's doing, because he's not just playing Roblox. And his like level of dedication to being good at it and mastering it is super intense and cool. And then I there was a time I had back to back, literally. I would talk to him, I'd go talk to the next client who played Roblox. They just played it. Thousands of hours just playing Roblox. And they were like, well, I'm going to be a game developer. I was like, oh, cool. What does that mean? Like, they're like, I'm going to make my own Roblox games. And they're like, oh, you know, you just kind of make the games.
Yeah.
And then he just went back to playing it. And I was like, you are playing a game, which is fun. And I'm not going to crap on the fact that you're having fun, right? But, like, you're not learning anything. Like, you're really good at beekeeping on this one Roblox game, and that's cool. But like, if you want to make the jump from, I kind of going back to The Rock, right? From like, oh, I'm just kind of casually doing something, to like, I am really making my life around this, right? Like, you have to be obsessed. Like, you have to like really, really care about it. But you have to be obsessed about the right thing, right? It's not obsessed about looking at pictures of super ripped dudes or like watching competitions online.
If it's 10,000 hours of looking at super ripped dudes, I tell you what, I'm a master of it.
Yeah, right. But it's not like obsession of watching weightlifting competitions or watching reruns of all of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, right? It's like, you have to be obsessed with actually lifting heavy things. Like, you have to be obsessed with being hurt, like, and being tired and waking up early and stepping onto a scale and seeing slight differences, or like being like, I'm going to work literal months so that I can lift 2.5 pounds more because I've like pushed this as far as this will go, and I'm going to keep pushing. Like,
well, okay. So let me just say, I mean, I think I generally agree with you. I think the only, it's not pushback at all, but basically just a way to wrap some of that together is, I think The Atlantic did a big, or at least was combining studies or whatever, but they're basically talking about like, the way to find job satisfaction is to pursue competency, which is a lot of what you're talking about. The only thing I would say is, I don't know that you have to be insanely good at things.
oh, you don't have to be insanely
to
good at
be
it.
functional at them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get what you're saying. But I actually remember. Do you remember during our like commencement speech was like a guy who played Bohemian Rhapsody on classical guitar? Do you remember this?
I don't remember anything, Jordan.
I can't remember if it was a commencement. It was like, we did graduation, but there was a thing where we were all in the convocation center. There was a guy with a classical guitar, and his whole point was that he spent 10,000 hours learning how to do Bohemian Rhapsody on the classical guitar, like all the parts at the same time, and it was fine. And I remember then being like, I'm sorry, that's it? That's so much work for like what?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess he was there talking, so I guess somebody cared. Anyway, and then the other thing is just if you find it interesting. So it's kind of, which also goes into the obsession thing, like you have to be interested in it. But I think all I was going to say is that I think it's fine to play Roblox as much as you want, but, and this goes back to what we were talking about with our friend who does music, it's like you also need to find something that you're like interested in and good in, probably, and pursue that too. You don't have to make every fun thing your job.
Yeah.
But like if you actually are interested in all the mechanics of game design, then great. Try and become a game developer if you think you're good at it and if there's opportunity in that. I would suggest that it's not a great time to do that. The industry's not doing so hot.
Indie developers are actually coming
true.
back. They're in vogue. Got to get your game on Game Pass.
With everything, it's like, realistically, building your own thing and selling 10,000 copies of it is probably going to be more financially viable than working for, I don't know,
Square Enix.
CD Projekt Red. Yeah, and you sell 1 billion copies, but then you get fired immediately, and you just crunched yourself to death. But yeah, it's just kind of like, I think it kind of comes down to the self-evaluation of, yes, you can like get obsessed with things and do all that, but I also think too there's the difficulty of like you do kind of still need, again, to be looking for lucky breaks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Unlikely that any friends of the pod here are the greatest ever at anything.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why would you be
I don't know, Dave,
watching my videos? I'm just kidding.
Dave's pretty great.
Dave's great. No, he's not a patron. He can't hear this. We can say whatever we want about Dave.
Exactly, and I'm going to say nice things because Dave's a gem.
No, Dave's the best. What I mean though is that it's like, you have to kind of put in the work for example, game development without actually knowing if there's an opportunity in it. But there probably is at some point. I just think if you keep doing a thing, I do think that there are lucky breaks, but I think you need to be able to recognize them and to capitalize on them. Mm-hmm. And whatever that looks like, if it means going to game developer, like game jams or whatever, or going to things to like meet people that might help you at some point. Like there's a lot of like intangible ways to sort of make more opportunities happen. One of them is just knowing more people. One of them is making more cool stuff. One is like finding avenues for it. And it's like, it does get really complicated and difficult. But it does feel like a lot of people that have succeeded in the thing that you want to do in one way or another, a lot of times they fell into it or they got lucky with a break somewhere, or they saw an opportunity and they pursued it well. And I think, it's just a constant dance of having to try and figure out what those are, especially because even if you get that break, who knows, the thing could collapse. Mm-hmm. Pace could fire everybody while you're there. Mm-hmm. And you just have to kind of keep going at it. And that's why it's probably also worth trying to think through, like, what are the things that you can do or are willing to do that are sort of stable and everlasting? Like, are you good at accounting? Like, maybe it'd be a good idea to get a 40-hour-a-week accounting job and then just kind of keep, coding on the weekends and looking for opportunities and stuff like that. But that's kind of its own thing. But just, like, find the things that you're interested in that will pay you, and then maybe you can spend your time finding the things that you're interested in that could be cool.
Yeah, it's the constant push pull of opportunity and ability. It's just kind of like, if in areas where there's tons of opportunity, you can make up for some lack in ability, right? Sure. Like, I mean, I would argue it's one of the things that's happening in the mental health field a bit is there's tons of opportunity for work in it. And one of the ways that they try to compensate for it is, well, we can take slightly less competent people now, right? Because it's like there's just such a crunch. And, at the end of the day, I don't think that's the correct answer. I think we just need to figure out how to make more competent people, not lower the bar necessarily. But in situations where there's low ability or low opportunity, like, you need to be very capable. And And I think that that's just kind of the part where we go back to like honest evaluation. Like sometimes you get lucky, right? Like I think the luck thing speaks to the opportunity where like sometimes you just got an opportunity because you were lucky. It doesn't mean you were more capable than someone else all the time. Like sometimes it's you were equally capable in a lot of ways to the other person. You just got lucky. And you know, and I think there's just that piece of it where it's like you kind of have to hold on to all of it. Just because you got lucky doesn't mean you're good. Just because you're good doesn't mean you're going to be lucky. Like all of these things kind of they ebb and flow, and it's a very fluid situation. And kind of going back to that initial point of like, how do you know when you're lucky, and what does it look like to be lucky, and how do you jump on those opportunities? I think it's just kind of that ability to be attuned to the it's a kind of fluid changing thing, right? Like you need to be rooted in your confidence of, you know what you know how to do, right? The thing you can control is your ability. You can get better at things, or you can at least control enough to go, okay, I can honestly assess my ability.
Well, and the only addendum to that is these guys I listen to this podcast / YouTube channel, Colin and Samir, they hired a guy, and they were testing him out first and trying him out, an editor, and they would say things like, "Do you know After Effects?" And he'd say, "Absolutely," and he had never even opened it. Mm-hmm. But he would say yes. He would go home. He would learn everything he possibly could, and then it would be as if he did. I do think that's also part of it. Is yes, like spend years developing your craft or whatever, but also if an opportunity arises, you just
go for it.
You have to make it happen. You couldn't say yes and then suck at it, which is a thing that I think I keep running into, is people saying that they can do something and then what they show is relatively mediocre. It's not always true. Mediocre. So if you're a specific person I've worked with, you're not the one. You did great. I've just worked with lots of people now from Cracked and from other publications and whatever. And I think it's just like, you do a good job, just regardless. Just say that you can and then do it, and then start to figure everything out after that. If these are the kinds of things that you want to be pursuing, you don't necessarily have to like first become the world's greatest game developer, because probably you're going to be in freaking QA or something when you start. Like nobody hires a game developer out of Roblox school. Or although maybe, I mean, I guess if he's like
the school at Hard Blocks.
Oh shit. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a lot more convoluted and nuanced, but I just think it's like, it's a difficult thing to assess. But I will just say again, I really think almost everything I've ever done has just been lucky breaks. Knowing people, or getting opportunities, or being at the right place at the right time, and just showing up as hard as I can every time. And just waiting for something to crack.
Well, it's like, but once again, it's like, it's the lucky break with the, you are capable enough to take the opportunity. Kind of going back to the editor, right? He got a lucky break working with people who are experts in their field, right? They know what they're doing. They have an audience. It's a great opportunity. And he didn't know things, knew he didn't know them, said he knew them, but I think that was rooted in the fact that he knew he could learn it. Like it once again, I do think it kind of circles back to this, like, yes, a lot of these people, it's rooted in a lucky break, and it's rooted in the fact that when the thing broke, they were like, and I'm capable enough to take the opportunity. Because he could have said like, yeah, I'll figure it out, and then go home and pick his nose for 12 hours and then come back and not know what he was doing, right? I think that he had worked so hard up to that point that when he was said, hey, when they told him like, hey, do you know how to do this? He was like, yes. And then he went home and he was a capable enough person to learn it. He had learned enough things up to that point. Like the skill he had developed was learning, right? And being able to like acquire and like step in and be able to competently do something. And I am sure that he spent a lot of time working to be good at that kind of stuff. Or, and this is the part where the self-awareness piece comes in, he might have just been naturally more talented, right? Like it was a combination of he went and he learned it. Like he did have to put in the time, but like he might have just been better than a lot of people. Like naturally he might have been smarter or had a better eye for it. Like I tell people all the time, I don't like there was a period of time when we were in high school where you're like, just learn bass. Like you could learn bass and we could play music together. And like I could probably have tried. I don't have an ear for music. I just don't. I know what sounds good to me and I like music, but like there are probably, if you put me in a lineup with 10 other randos, I probably would be bottom 2 when it comes to actually being able to just learn a rhythm and pick it up and do that stuff. I have just no natural ability with music. Now, I do think that I could have learned it, right? And you hear about this all the time with bands. I didn't want to be the guy that I'm about to describe, but the person who like their friends were really talented musicians, and so he jumped in.
So this is literally U2. The bassist didn't know how to play bass, but so the drummer of U2, Larry Mullen Jr., put an ad in their high school that said, "I'm starting a band." The 5 people showed up, which became U2. One of them left after a little bit, but it ended up being Bono, the freaking Edge, 2 generational talents. Drummer's also very good. And then this guy, Adam Clayton, who literally just looked around, saw that nobody had a bass, brought a bass. They started playing their jamming, and they're like, something sounds wrong. And he's just plugging away. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. And so he had to learn it a little bit. But he was also the only guy there. And I do think that's part of that too, is recognizing that like maybe you want to be on SNL, but only 15 people are on SNL. Is there another way to do some of that? Like the thing that I guess I was thinking about with the After Effects guys, like he got really lucky in the sense that they didn't ask him to show an example of After Effects. The way that they were in the hiring process, they didn't know what they were doing exactly, and this guy just showed up and was like, I'm willing to do anything, and that ended up being what they wanted and what they needed. So that he learned it in that time. But it's just kind of the like, there's a bug on the floor, Devin. Your office is filthy.
It's disgusting. I'm sorry.
Basically just being like, so that's like a lucky opportunity that you take advantage of, but sometimes it's like there are certain things where you may never get, like SNL. I don't know that I'm ever going to get, no matter how hard I try and push, that I'm going to get a lucky break to get on SNL. And even if I did get an audition, I'm not funnier than Will Ferrell. There's no amount of time I could spend doing that where I'm going to get on SNL, probably. So it's calibrating. I love making funny things, but how do I do it? Or like, what are the opportunities? Who are the other people I could work for? I do think this could be a whole separate discussion, but we're already over basically. But it's like, I was talking to 2 of the guys that were in my band with me, and I went to go see another friend's band on Saturday. And we were just talking, and I was saying to my friend, the lead singer of our old band, I was like, I think you are just like raw talent. You're just good at music. But you are like, you need to be paired with somebody that can make it exist. Like, I think there are some people that just have raw swirling talent, but don't have the skill of making it exist in the world or getting it in front of people or whatever. And so I do think it's worth, I don't think that's the only dichotomy or like those are the only 2 types of people, but you do kind of want to realize, are you like a talented person who just like can't function at any sort of business or like getting things in front of people or getting things done? Or are you kind of like not that talented, but you're a really good like project manager type person, and you just need to find the talent, or you need to find an agent, or whatever, like trying to recognize too. I guess the only reason that I sometimes feel skeptical about, I think our sort of untalented friend could put 10,000 more hours into his music, but I don't think it'll matter.
I agree.
So there's he will be better, but it'll also be 10,000
better enough to break into a place where the opportunity is so limited. Like,
well,
probably
that's true.
not.
Yeah, it's also just not a good space. So anyway, there's probably like 11 people that listen to this episode. Probably 5 that have gotten this far. Thanks for joining. We're about to leave the pod. Pew, pew, pew.